second topic. And this is where Margaret and Cornelia are going to help us out a little bit. They have some personal stories that they're going to share with us about what it's like to be a teammate, and a teammate with different successes on a team. All right. Margaret is gonna, she's now a captain, is gonna tell us a little bit about how it's tricky to develop a rapport with folks that have unique personalities, and when that may not be the most positive thing, when you don't have that sync together. All right, she'll tell us a story about her second year at Central Connecticut and how that transpired. Then we'll shift gears to Cornelia, who will kind of give us the flip side. Both have had huge rosters for their first 2 years. The COVID year really did throw things for a loop, and how they managed those times with those huge rosters and with those people. All right. So this focus is going to be on how to be an authentic person with a teammate and how those relationships can be beneficial or negative. So I'm going to give the floor to Margaret. She'll tell us about how her second year at Central Connecticut University went. Marge?
Yes. Well, I was so excited to talk about this subject because it is so important. And the one thing when Coach John had called me about it was how this year I was telling everyone, I was like, we are going to win. Like we will win. We have all the tools because we had all our fifth years stay. We had the libero of the year. I was like, we will win. We didn't win. And that was because of exactly what Coach John is talking about today, where there was a disconnect. There was a disconnect between freshman and fifth years. There wasn't the friendships. There wasn't people going out of their way to look at each other in the eye during play, like really push each other, motivate each other. And what happened because of that is I wrote down, we had 8 5-set losses, and 5 out of 8 of those were in conference. And every 5-set match, it was the same story because it was, you really see skill can only take you so far. It's how you approach a game mentally, how you're going to look at your teammates, how you're going to support them to get through those tough matches. And so one of those things to think about too, and that's what has changed now because obviously I was given captain, I'm really excited. But as a captain and also one who doesn't play too much, you have to really think about how you're going to approach the court every single day and how you're going to look at your teammates, how you're going to foster those friendships. I think I wrote down a quote that you just said, but by viewing your teammates, you're going to foster that relationship. So will you be the last one out of the huddle? Will you be the last one to make eye contact? If you see, say, Corn was struggling that day on the court, but then she finally gets that big kill, are you going to be the one that is just extra excited and getting her excited? So I had the similar story of we couldn't do it this season. And right after the season ended, we had team meeting. I think everyone who's left knew exactly what the issue was, which we just didn't have a connection. And so we talked about everything that was wrong and how we were going to change it though, because you can only talk about the things that were wrong for so long. The season's gone. Now there's I have 2 more left. So let's win. So we changed. It's now so competitive during practice. I could play for hours with them. Like it is the most fun thing ever. And it really is just deciding to show up and see the background of your players, how you're going to talk to them, how you're going to form these relationships, and really being the most supportive you can be at all moments.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, Marge. I have a follow-up question. Do you have like a specific moment or an especially challenging moment during this past season that you kind of realized that there wasn't that bond? I know you mentioned that you had a lot of 5-set matches, and yes. We all know 5-setters are tough, right? They're so emotional, right? You guys are like, you either had it's been a battle, or maybe you thought you were going to win it quickly, and now this other team is fighting, and it really comes down to just emotion and the desire to fight with one another, I think, in a 5-set match. Was there a moment that you understood that maybe this team just didn't bond in the way that you wanted?
Well, there was halfway through the season, we played Sacred Heart and we got destroyed. Like the worst, just horrible. We weren't there. But then we were like, okay, we'll bounce back at the next one. We played a team which we should beat. Haven't lost them in over 5 years, and that was the 5-set match where we lost. And that was the one where it's like, okay, when is this going to change and how are we going to change it? Because that's when everyone noticed it. Just, there wasn't a connect. The other team was so excited. They loved each other. They were having the most fun I've ever seen. And our team was not. And so that was the big turn where everyone was like, okay, how can we change this? It's not working.
What I'm getting from that comment is the idea that it's visible. It's a visible thing when you notice that a team has a bond or doesn't have a bond. Your opponent there sounded like they were enjoying the experience with one another, rather than not enjoying the experience kind of like as an individual.
Yeah.
And that may have been, that last comment was kind of targeted towards your team.
And also, just to chime in, as someone who wasn't playing during that game, it's also the time that it takes for the people who are on the court to actually notice it themselves. Because sometimes when you're on the court, you can't see it. You're playing, you're thinking about playing, whatever. But it's the time you take by actually listening to the people who are watching, your coach, like to really think about it. Like there might actually be an issue that you're not seeing and being able to change it. Like maybe we're not being the most supportive team ever, and just realize it and then change. Like that's when you do it.
That's an awesome comment, because that's challenging, kind of having that little objective out-of-body experience. And I know our coaching staff really does a great job at kind of recognizing the mood of the team. But as a coach, we can only do so much. We can recognize, hey, this is where we're at right now. But as a player, you have a different vantage point. You have a different ability to motivate. One last follow-up question. Why is it working now? Like, what are you guys doing that is changing the feel of the team? And you mentioned that the gym is competitive. That is the best environment to get better in. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you can have a competitive practice environment, woo, you're going to see your development skyrocket. All right, and you mentioned you can play for hours with these gals, hours with the coaches, with the group, the family that you're building. Like, how did that happen? How is that happening? Yeah.
Well, one of the things was we have now a team of 12 who all actually took the time the ones who were playing, took the time to actually see what people were seeing. If I said, no, it's actually not, like, there's not as much talk as you think there is, they changed. Like it's just a personal, everyone now just personally decided to commit themselves to focusing throughout practice, supporting each other, and also, like you said, how to talk to your teammates. Now that's a big thing, because I talked about that when we had our team talk. Like, you have to learn how to do that, because certain people are not. I think I'm being the most supportive person. That they don't want that, and so you have to learn, and that's what we did. And so now it doesn't matter who I'm sitting next to on serve receive. We're gonna pass the ball because it's supportive, it's fun, and everyone is just. Sometimes you just have to really mentally look at practice in a different way of changing.
Excellent. What I heard from that comment was that we're actually authentically thinking about the feedback that our teammates are giving us and using that as like a truth. All right, and that's hard. Getting feedback, getting criticism about what's actually happening. It's hard to take that as truth and not become defensive. Anyone ever become defensive while they play volleyball? I have. It's such a personal thing, right? You're trying your best, and because of the beautiful sport that we play, every contact is dependent on someone else, save for the serve. And it becomes a very personal thing. Like, you want to be successful for your teammates, but allowing commentary to be truth for you in the reality, because you trust where the advice is coming from, is huge. All right, so it sounds like Margaret's developing a rapport with her teammates, where if a comment comes from the sideline or from another teammate out on the court, that the person that is receiving that comment understands that this is a benefit to me. Absorbing this knowledge, absorbing this comment is going to be a benefit to me rather than a criticism. Even if it is a criticism, even if it is, hey, I think you can work a little harder here. This is meant to build you up rather than break you down. All right. Margaret,
John,
thank
can
you
I
for-
ask a follow-up question to Margaret really quick?
Oh my God, Garrett, you scared me. Yes, you can.
Sorry, buddy. Sorry.
Very good.
Marge, really quick, I'm wondering, like, when you guys kind of had this realization of, all right, like something needs to change. You know, we just lost this 5-set match to this team we think we should beat, and then you guys now go down this path of getting to know each other a little bit better and understanding each other more. How much of that was driven by you guys as players versus your coach addressing these things and saying, hey, these are things that we have to do? Because I think it's kind of the norm for coaches to be driving stuff like this, and then it kind of feels forced at times when it's like, you know, hey, Margaret, talk to that person and be friends with her. And I don't think it's always so genuine. So I'm wondering how that went for you guys.
Yeah, so our coach, she started games before to notice it. Just like we have journals actually that we write our thoughts from after the game, our thoughts before the game. And every single journal started to be the same, except for a few people that didn't realize the issue. And so the coach noticed the issue, but the coach, her saying all these things could only go so far. It was us as a team deciding to change. Like during this 5th-set match, she said, Margaret, can you talk, like, from your journal? What did you say? And like, that's when people started to realize, oh, there's all these different, like, your teammates are noticing the same thing. It's not just a coach, because it can get repetitive. It's coming from a coach and you're not connecting with what she's saying, how she's saying it. So really it was us and who started to talk on the team and change it rather than staying silent about something you saw. Or it was just, yeah, it was the teammates who changed it.
That's awesome. Yeah, because I think also if your coach had said, hey, I feel like we've got an issue with communication, does anyone agree? You know, kind of by default, people put their hand up to like agree, you know, but instead you guys were genuinely expressing that and then able to make the change because you wanted to. And I think that's a really important point for all the athletes listening to this, that, you know, the change does have to start somewhere. And usually it's you as that one person who gets people going. So thank you.
I love that you were bold enough and brave enough to share what you had in your journal, and that you were honest enough to kind of write down what you were objectively seeing. Great strategy here, ladies and gentlemen, that you can employ for yourself, kind of journaling what you're feeling and observing during a practice session that you may embrace or may want to change. All right, let's shift gears to Cornelia. All right, well, I just want to remind you, Cornelia is at BC, and this past year she had a roster of plus 20, which is an enormous amount of athletes and athleticism on one roster, and now has come down to, I think, 14. Is that right, Cornelia? Excellent.
Yeah, we're 14 now.
14, and despite losing, I'm sure, great folks that you grew close with, the team of 14 are now bonded in a way that Cornelia mentioned to me is going to be huge for them moving forward into this coming season, in the spring season. So I'd love for Cornelia to kind of share her story, her experience on the Boston College volleyball team, and how being an authentic person and teammate has kind of brought this team together.
Yeah, I think, well, first, like what Margaret was saying is super relatable. And I think she did a really good job of kind of like outlining how like it feels to be on a team and how it feels to be on a court, like when you know there's a disconnect. And so I think that while I'm super grateful for my teammates and how close we are, there's always times where you're going to feel like that disconnect, like no team is perfect. And so that's just something that you have to work at to kind of like foster those relationships. And something like that I really appreciate that a lot of like my older teammates have done. For example, there's a 5th year. Her name is Claire. She doesn't practice with us anymore because it's like her season's over. But even still, like the other day she texted me and she's like, hey, do you want to hang out? There's a senior on our team, Jewel, who like super close with my roommate, and the two of us are freshmen. It's like they don't practice with us anymore. They're not playing anymore. Like Claire was plus 1,000 kills in her career here. Like she's insane. She's crazy. But she still is making the time to like hang out with the freshmen and like make sure I'm having, you know, a good time and getting to know me and see if I have any problems. So I think it's like taking that extra step to like go out and actively like connect with your teammates. And then what John was talking about, like touching on with that authenticity and like being an authentic person and being there with your teammates. I think something that's hard with friendships and something that's hard with teammates is like it's a lot of time together. It's a lot of time together. Like outside of doing anything just within practice, it's like 20 hours a week, which is a lot of time to be spending with someone. And then on top of that, like my team, especially the freshmen, like we eat pretty much every meal together. We spend all weekend together. Like we can't go. We went on spring break together. Like we spend all this time together. You know, it's just we do everything as a group. And I think just spending that much time together has been really good for us because we realized like, yes, we all love each other and we all care about each other and we know pretty much everything there is to know. But at the same time, like you still need to work towards having these strong relationships and like you still need to have conversations that aren't easy to have. Like there's times when there's conflict or like when you know there's something going on in your teammate's life that outside of volleyball, inside of volleyball, whatever, that's hard to talk about. And like having those challenging conversations is what makes being friends so great and being teammates so great. It's like what kind of like what you do behind the scenes to work towards like understanding. And it's kind of like the I view you thing that we were talking about earlier. Like you have to, it's a whole image of a person versus just like the one snapshot that you get of them at practice. And then the way that that carries over into practice is what I said to John earlier, like before this call, it's like this euphoric feeling of being able to play with people and spend time with people that you like wholeheartedly trust and care about and like want to be around. Because volleyball on its own is great. Like it's a good sport, it's fun. But the reason it's like addictive and the reason like it's the thing that I spend at least 20 hours a week doing is because of the people that I play it with and like the feeling that you get playing a sport with people who you know have your back and people that you have their back. It's like a trust thing that is kind of an indescribable feeling, but it's like so amazing once you get to that level and it's so worth it to like put in the effort and like take a second to think about your teammates and be like, wow, okay, I love this person. I care about them. Like I'm going to work towards a meaningful, authentic relationship.
Corn, thank you so much for that. And I love the latter comment with the benefit of like building those relationships. I think it is something like a superpower. When you are on a court with a group of gals and group of guys that you know have each other's back, you get into like this, it's hard to describe, almost animalistic, kind of adrenaline filled, euphoric state where you're just like, I am not going to lose. And like the outcome doesn't even, it kind of becomes this idea that doesn't even matter anymore. I see Sam Stievelman up on my screen here. So I'll share a quick story because I stopped by their court, I think during Spike Fest. And your team was in that moment. Your team of just absolute ballers were in that moment for a match that went to 3 and was a tight 1-3. And it was just awesome to watch them play as a group. That first set, holy moly, you guys were unstoppable. Like it just seemed like everything was fluid. Like you guys were just one big organism that was just flowing together. And that's what we're trying to achieve. And it's not easy. It's not easy. Cornelia is in a fortunate position to be in a university that sets up structured time for these bonds to be forged. All right, I'm not ignorant to that fact. All right, going to college, you're going to have a lot more time to be able to see one another, and there's less physical barriers like distance or different schools. So it may be a little bit more challenging for us in the club structure to develop these bonds, but it's not impossible. It's definitely not impossible. One thing that you can do is just invite some folks over to your house if you're comfortable with that. Maybe go to now that the weather is getting warmer, it kind of create a moment where you guys can play volleyball outside. Go have a lunch like a little picnic. But it takes effort to manufacture these moments that are going to create the bonds that will fuel how you play out on the court. And that's like the big takeaway that I got from Corn's contribution. The idea that because they're investing in one another, even players who are no longer actively on the roster, because they're investing in one another, their energy out on the court is just more potent. It is more vigorous. They have like meaning behind why they're here. And I love how Cornelia mentioned, like, volleyball is a great sport. In and of itself, it's fantastic. Watching it is cool, but participating in it with a group of athletes that you know have your back outside of just this crazy game that we play just makes playing the game so much more authentic, so much more like fun. It becomes an investment in one another. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it because I've had moments like that where it's just like, man, I love this guy next to me. And because I love him, I'm going to try my darn best to make sure that whatever I do out on this court is going to benefit him. It's going to benefit us. And I have a little quote from Lily Saleeby's enormous essay that I just want to read once again. Just give me a moment to pull it up. She actually mentioned this idea where it is an us versus them mentality that we really want to contribute to our school, to our team, to our beings. All right. The idea that how my past can influence whether or not my teammate is successful is huge. And I really want to make sure that she's successful or he's successful because I care about them. Like, just the layers of understanding that goes into that one concept is huge. I want them to be successful because I love them, not because we're just trying to win this match. Huge. And it's definitely not an easy thing to come by. It requires a little bit of vulnerability. All right, Corn, I'm going to ask a follow-up question. I'm sure in order to build this kind of bond with your team, there have been conversations you've been vulnerable. Would that be accurate to say?
Absolutely. Like, the most vulnerable in my entire life is like some moments that I've had here, and it's 100% worth it. Like, it's hard sometimes to ask for help or to like want to open yourself to things that might be challenging to talk about for whatever reason, but like, that's how you build those connections, and that's how you establish the trust that, like, you know, people have your back.
Yeah, it's incredible. And here at Northeast, and I'm sure as we can see in other institutions across the country, we strive to build safe environments where that can be done. We are really, really fortunate to be able to have a group, a community that wants us to be bonded that way. Like, Corn has BC, these 14 girls. Margaret has Central Connecticut with her team. You have Northeast, you have us to share who you are. And we really do want you to be that comfortable with the players on your team, because it will unlock so much undiscovered potential. And it's incredible what can be done with that. Ladies and gentlemen, do you have any questions for Margaret or Cornelia? They've taken time out of, I'm sure, their busy day to be here with us. So feel free to ask questions of these two. I mean, we have Division I athletes here who are like right in the midst of their development. Cornelia is going sophomore year, Margaret's a junior or going into junior year. So please do not hesitate to ask any questions. Cornelia actually has one of her good friends, Whitney Wise, in the background there. She's a NEVBC alum. She's comfortable. And she's a high-level rower, correct, crew? So we have 3 Division I athletes who are just here waiting for you if you're interested in asking a question or two. So I'll give you guys the floor. I'll monitor the chat just to see if you have any questions about kind of how you can build bonds with one another during the season.
John, I have a question. It's Kat.
Man, you guys just pop on and terrifies me. Go for it.
Without naming any names or having to get too specific if you don't want to, have you guys ever encountered a situation on a high school club or college team where someone was communicating with you in a way that wasn't, say, productive or helpful? And how, like, if so, how did you approach that or deal with that? Have you ever had to kind of address that with a teammate before?
I mean, oh, sorry, go ahead, Corn.
Okay. I think, yeah, it happens. Like, not every interaction is going to be perfect. I've definitely had like one or two instances where I've like, it's kind of like the feeling is like, oh, like I didn't love the way like that was said to me. And so for me personally, when that happens, like I need to take like 12 to 24 hours. Not okay. If it's like a serious thing, I need to take like a little bit of time to like reflect on my own and be like, okay, why do I feel this way? Like, why did I not love the comment? Like, what aspect was it? Was it the tone? Was it exactly what was being said? And just kind of understand first, like where I'm coming from. So that way I can be like, okay, hey, like I didn't love like the way that you approached me with this. This is what I would prefer. So I think I've had this season like an instance or two where it's my teammates' intention is to be like, it is to be helpful and to, because we have our coaches, but at the same time, especially when you have a big team, like you have to be able to help each other, learn from each other, and your teammates see a lot more than your coaches do. So I had a teammate say something to me and it wasn't what she said, it was just the tone. And it was like the middle of practice and it was just a one-off comment. And I don't even think she thought twice about it. It was just one of those things where I had to like take a second, reflect, and then be like, hey, just a heads up, like I didn't love the way you said this. And she was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Like I totally didn't mean anything by it and never had an issue with her ever again. So it's just like that kind of voicing your opinions, but knowing why.
That's really cool.
I was just she said exactly what it is. You got to take time if there's a comment, because I mean, it's a totally different situation if a teammate's actually saying something that's not nice, but they're most likely trying to encourage you, trying to be supportive. So like one thing we do is before our practice even starts, after we stretch, we go into this huddle and we talk about how we're going to act at practice. And one of those things is like, that's a great time to say, let's make sure we're saying like best, most supportive comments you've ever said in your life. Or like, that's when you can say like, I mean, I know I had a teammate who would always say, no, you're good. You're good. And I was like, yeah. It would like make me nervous. Like, yeah, no, I think I'm fine. I don't know, but like, that's when to say that comment, like, let's stay off of those comments because hopefully that player just is like, oh, she realizes it and then moves on. Like, that's just something to notice about each other in a team, like be able to say it and then let it go and move on. So yeah, that's just what we've had.
That's really cool. I think the key there is like you hopefully both sides of that, the initial comment and kind of your addressing of it, like are coming from a place of love where you guys like have a relationship with your teammates already and you can feel comfortable enough to say that, and that like they do want you to succeed and all that, so that it feels very genuine. And that's the type of stuff, like John was saying, it's harder to develop in club. And I think a lot of times people wait, for like the team bonding events or something for the parents and coaches to organize. And like, hey, those little moments can happen in practice. Like you can just walk into practice and like give your teammate a hug, and like say, and or even after a play or something like that, or in a huddle, and having that like contact outside of just like both like physical or kind of a conversational contact, like outside of what your coach tells you have to do. And I think that really needs to come from the players, and the players that are doing that are making those genuine bonds, and those types of conversations would then be easier to have versus with someone you don't have that kind of bond with already. So that's really cool. Thanks for sharing, guys.
Margaret, I was literally laughing out loud at your good comment. That's like the number one piece of feedback I've gotten from athletes as far as what they hate to hear in that moment. like when people try to calm them down and like tell them like, it's okay, you're fine, you know, and yet everyone continues to do it. And it's just a funny, like, kind of incident that seems to be on repeat, but hopefully we'll get there. But, you know, I'm wondering, through this conversation, we've been so good. Like, we're the good guys, right? Like, we never make mistakes. So it's always how other people talk to us that's bad. And like, well, how do we address that when it happens? But like, let's not be naive. We're at fault too sometimes, right? And we say things that are wrong, and probably someone's gonna say something, like speak up to us if we mess up. So have you guys ever been in that situation where someone came to you and said, hey, I did not like the way you said that? And how do you respond to that? How do you respond to being that person? Because I think instantly you can get defensive, right? So what's a good way to handle that?
I actually said the "you're good" comment one time when I shouldn't have to one of our setters. And I noticed it right away when I said it because she was like coming off the bench and I high-fived her. I was like, oh, you're good. I didn't mean it like that. Didn't mean it at all. And she was like, yeah, I am good. Because, you know, it's a comment that yeah. So it was my bad. But instead of talking to her about it, because obviously she knows I wouldn't mean that comment in that way, I was extra supportive to her the minute she went back in, like being the loudest person ever for her, because she is good. She's doing great. And so it was my turn to switch the comments to being even better, like being more supportive, being just so excited that she was playing so well. So it's just, you can switch the comment. They're not going to think about it for that long, hopefully.
Yeah, but you responded with actions versus just like oh, sorry, I said that type thing. You're like, forget the apologies. I'm just going to be better.
Yeah, because she is my friend. Like, I mean, club friends too. Like, you know, your teammate doesn't mean it in that way. It's just how you're going to switch and how you're going to get them out of, what if I said that you're good and it got to her head a little bit? How am I going to switch it and make it so that it's out of her head in a second?
Love that. Let's go, Corn.
And I think also like listening to what John was reading from Lily's essay, like Lily and I played club in high school together, and it took me like a little bit of time. It took both of us a little bit of time to like adjust to each other's like encouragement styles. Like we both play and we're both very like energetic when we play and like love the sport, but we have different kind of styles. So that was something that we had to like work together through, and where it's like, okay, like she likes to be spoken to this way and I like to be spoken to a certain way. And so that's like a unique experience I had with her, was like the both of us kind of getting to a point with each other where we're like, okay, like we can talk about how we like to interact with each other. So I just was like thinking back to good times, but also times where it's like self-reflection and also like, okay, like that's not useful for her. Like I need to think of a way and craft a way with her, like speaking to her that will be useful and effective in a game time situation and practice and whatever. And so that's what the little essay reminded me of.
I love that you brought that up, because if we're going to be vulnerable and real, like you and Lily beefed at times, and I remember it clearly. And the cool part was that you guys were both great players and you knew you had to coexist, and you didn't make it anyone else's problem. You didn't come tell me or talk to Kat and like, I don't know how to deal with, you know, you guys were just like, hey, we got to figure this out and find a way to coexist. And I know for me, as a player, there have been guys on the team they're not the first person that I'm like, you know, I'm all over them in those big moments or whatever, like celebrating with them the most. Like it's always making eye contact, giving them a high five. And we got this mutual understanding of like, hey, maybe my vibe and your vibe are going to clash a little bit sometimes, but like we got to be here for the whole team. And that's totally okay, right? So like be your own individual person, have your personality, not feel like it's got to be harmonious with every other person. But instead you guys like came to these agreements of, hey, I got to be like this and you got to be like that. And we can help each other by, you know, being ourselves and supporting one another. And that's about as good as we can get to. And I think that is the more impressive way to be a teammate, rather than like everything is just great and oh, that's my best friend. And it's not like you and Whitney out there just going middles and, you know, having that exchange in and out of the sideline and everything's like beautiful all the time. You know, I like the struggles a little bit better. Yeah, nice high five. And So I know I was really proud of you guys for doing that, and cool that we can reflect on it a couple years later and realize there was some good learning going on there.
Yeah, and I think you're not always going to be like best friends with everybody on your team. It's like irrational to expect that, especially when you're on a bigger team. And so just figuring out like how to interact with everyone is kind of like puzzle pieces, you know? Like you don't have to be super tight with everyone, but it's like, and there's girls on my team now that I'm closer with some than I am with others, but it's just like you're still teammates and you're still playing for the same objective, and you still need to be able to trust and respect each other to have like to play well together. So I think it's just kind of that balance and like understanding, okay, there's a bigger objective here. Like we need to work through this, which is also like a great life skill to be able to know how to get along with or make people feel respected, but then also like truly respect people, even if you guys don't fully get along.
John, you must be proud of these athletes, man. They listened to your AMP sessions in previous years.
Dude, I'm so pumped. Corn, you're just like giving life advice right now. Let's go. The major takeaway that I'd like to close with is was summed up, I think, really well by Margaret and Cornelia and with Lily's piece, is that it takes effort. It takes effort to forge the bonds that will end up with your best friend forever. Forge bonds that will be respectful and acknowledge the larger goal of your program. And it'll take effort to recognize how folks would like to be spoken with. So I guess I'm going to leave this AMP session with a challenge for you guys. How much effort can you put into the development of your rapport with your teammates in the latter half of this season? Are you invested enough? And it takes energy. It takes some self-sacrifice. Are you going to be invested enough to be able to recognize your shortcomings, maybe a teammate's shortcomings, respond respectfully, and kind of enhance the experience you're having on your teams? Because the payoff is enormous for life and for the moments that you're about to share over the next few months with us playing volleyball. So with that, I want to thank everyone for their time this morning. Let's get a little thank you to Corn and Margaret, along with Lily, to spending time with us and giving us that wisdom, because you guys really made the session. It was wonderful to hear real life experiences about how this stuff is important.